The climate crisis is increasingly shaping patterns of human movement across the world. Rising sea levels, extreme weather, droughts, and food insecurity are forcing millions of people to leave their homes in search of safer environments. By the mid-2020s, global displacement had reached unprecedented levels, with more than 117 million people forcibly displaced worldwide due to conflict, persecution, and environmental pressures. Climate-related disasters alone have caused around 250 million displacements in the last decade, illustrating the scale of the emerging challenge. Within this global context, cities like Vancouver are becoming increasingly important destinations and policy hubs for climate migration. Climate migration refers to the movement of people driven partly or entirely by environmental changes such as flooding, desertification, wildfires, and sea level rise. Scientists and policy experts estimate that 150 to 200 million people could be displaced by climate change by 2050. Much of this movement will occur within countries, but a significant portion will involve cross-border migration to relatively stable regions. Wealthier countries in the global north, including Canada, are expected to receive increasing numbers of migrants seeking safety, economic opportunity, and environmental stability. Canada's West Coast is particularly relevant to this discussion. Vancouver is widely recognized as a global city with strong economic opportunities, political stability, and a comparatively moderate climate. The city has experienced steady population growth in recent decades, driven largely by immigration and the region's attractive natural environment. For migrants fleeing environmental instability, whether from Pacific Island states threatened by rising seas or regions experiencing drought and crop failure, Vancouver represents a place where adaptation and opportunity intersect. However, the city's role in climate migration is not simply about receiving new residents. Vancouver itself is actively preparing for climate change impacts. The municipal government has developed extensive policies aimed at building resilience to extreme heat, flooding, sea level rise, and wildfire smoke. These initiatives are part of Vancouver's Climate Change Adaptation Strategy and Climate Emergency Action Plan, which aim to protect infrastructure, ecosystems, and vulnerable communities as climate risks intensify. In recent years, the city has opened cooling centers during heat waves and invested in energy-efficient housing retrofits and renewable infrastructure to prepare residents for future environmental stress. At the same time, Vancouver is also experiencing climate-related disruptions within its own region. In 2025, atmospheric rivers and severe rainfall caused flooding across parts of coastal British Columbia, demonstrating the region's vulnerability to extreme weather. Events like these illustrate that climate migration is not a distant problem affecting only small island nations or developing countries. Instead, climate change is reshaping mobility patterns even in highly developed urban areas. For policymakers, this creates a complex challenge. Cities must balance humanitarian responsibilities with practical concerns such as housing availability, infrastructure capacity, and social services. Vancouver already faces one of the most expensive housing markets in North America, with rents and home prices rising dramatically over the past decade. If climate migration increases significantly, urban planners will need to rethink zoning policies, housing supply, and transportation systems to accommodate a growing and increasingly diverse population. Social media conversations and popular media discussions often highlight these tensions. On platforms such as TikTok, Instagram, and Reddit, Vancouver residents frequently debate whether the city can remain livable while absorbing new waves of migrants. Some posts emphasize Vancouver's responsibility as a wealthy and climate-stable region to welcome displaced communities, while others focus on concerns about affordability and overcrowding. These digital conversations reflect a broader societal debate about climate justice and global responsibility. From an ethical perspective, many scholars argue that countries with high historical carbon emissions, including Canada, have a moral obligation to assist climate-affected populations. Research on climate migration often frames this responsibility as a form of climate justice, recognizing that the communities most vulnerable to environmental disruption have contributed the least to global greenhouse gas emissions. Scholars emphasize that climate migration policy should therefore include humanitarian pathways, resettlement programs, and urban planning strategies that support both newcomers and existing residents. Looking ahead to the late 2020s and beyond, Vancouver's role in climate migration will likely grow. Coastal cities around the world are facing increasing risks from sea level rise, which could eventually displace millions of people living in low-lying regions. Scientists warn that even modest increases in sea levels could dramatically increase flooding and economic damage in coastal urban centers. As environmental pressures intensify, migration towards stable cities like Vancouver may become more common. Ultimately, the story of climate migration is also the story of cities. Urban centers are where displaced people seek safety, work, and community. They are also where policy innovation, infrastructure development, and social integration take place. Vancouver's challenge in the 2025-2026 period and in the decades ahead will be to balance environmental resilience with social inclusion. If successful, the city could become a model for how urban communities respond to one of the defining humanitarian and environmental issues of the 21st century.